Here we want to find the exact value of some inverse trig functions with their trig functions. And an inverse trig function will undo a trig function if they match names there, if you're in the restricted range for the inverse function. If you're not, that won't be true. So we'll be able to see that as we work these. The first one says we want the inverse sine of the sine of negative pi fourths. If we think of inverse sine, the restriction was the right half of the circle, and negative pi fourths is within that interval. So these will undo each other, and the final answer is negative pi fourths. Looking at the second one, we've got inverse cosine of the cosine of pi sixths. So when I think of cosine's inverse, the restrictions are from 0 to pi. Is this angle between 0 and pi? And it is. So they will undo each other, and the final answer will just be pi sixths. Now, looking at this next one, it's asking us to find the inverse sine of the sine of 3 pi fourths. Now, remember, inverse sine was the right half of the circle, and 3 pi fourths is over here. So they're not going to just cancel out, because you can't give 3 pi fourths as the answer to an inverse sine. It has to be something between negative pi halves and pi halves. So you got a couple ways to think about it. You can either say, well, where is the sine value in that restricted area the same as the sine value would be for 3 pi fourths, and that's going to be right here, and that's the answer, pi fourths. The other way you can think about it is actually, if you're not sure if it's in the range or whatever, and if you just want to work this, what is the sine at 3 pi fourths? And that is square root 2 over 2. And now we want to take the inverse sine of that, which is asking us, when is the sine square root 2 over 2, but on this restricted interval from negative pi halves to pi halves. So when is the sine square root 2 over 2 on that interval? And that's right here at pi fourths. So either way to think about it. Okay, let's look at the last one. This one is an inverse cosine, and inverse cosine, those restricted values for the inverse cosine's range need to be between 0 and pi, and this angle is not between 0 and pi, so they're not just going to cancel each other out. The answer is not going to be negative pi sixths, but let's think about where negative pi sixths is. Negative pi sixths is right here, and the cosine value there would be square root 3 over 2, a positive square root 3 over 2. So where on our restricted interval has that same value? And that would be right here. And so the final answer there would be at pi 6, because you do get square root 3 over 2.